Hey everyone, I hope you're well. This is the story about what if Naruto was neglected and became a Mist Shinobi. Before we start, please subscribe to the channel and like the video as well. So without any further ado, let's start the what if. Alright brats, this fight is for Kale to earn the right become an S-ranked mage, like before, no killing or maiming. Makarov stated. Both Urza and Gildarts stood on one side, Kale on the other. But before it could begin, Kale walked up to the pair. He held out his hand for Urza first as he spoke to the pair, as she shook it, then Gildarts. Win or lose, makes little difference too, but I do hope to have a great fight with you both. They nodded to him. Urza liked the respect he shows while Gildarts wants to see his power. Oh Urza, when this is over, come see me about your eye. I know it is fake and I can help you gain your real eye back, if you're willing to trust me, he said with a serious look. She gasped. He knew. You can fix it? She asked shakily. It is within power, so yes, I can, he gave her a nice smile. He then turned to Gildarts and never seeing the look of shock and hope on the redhead's face. Kana has something to tell you when we are done, something really important. So once this is done, be expecting a visit from her. The old man nodded, wondering what it could be. Nodding to them, he went back to his spot and Mira gave the sign. Begin. And with that, Urza went first, equipping with 2 katana as Kale pulled out his trench daggers and raced ahead as well and got into a kenjutsu battle as metal blades crashed into each other with force. The guild watching off to the side were in absolute shock seeing this. Whoa, Kale is just incredible. He is taking on Urza at her own game, he even managed to make Laxus back down. This is insane. Droy stated, watching. The girls however were watching in awe, stars in their eyes, even little Maze who was cooing and clapping for her uncle making Biska smile. Both she and Alzak would be eternally grateful for him saving their firstborn. Wow, dad is so cool, I want him to teach me how to do that. Wendy said, bouncing up and down. Calm down child, let us watch this for now. Carla said. You're still just as amazing as I remember Papa. Edilana said softly. Natsu and Gray were total shock. Elfman was screaming out how he was a man. Gildarts was observing the fight, seeing how he battles, and he quite impressed to say the least. He moved quite similar to Urza, but his was a bit more refined. She would waste a movement here and there, he wouldn't, and if he did he made up for in defense. Urza was having the time of her life, her smile never left, someone she could swordplay with and was more than likely stronger than her, it was refreshing to say the least. I feel so alive right now, you're such a treat, thank you, she said with giddiness. He chuckled as they continued, this time, taking it up a notch. He put away his daggers and took out a sword from one of his tattoo seals. A puff of smoke appeared and in his hand was a beautiful looking sword that made everyone stop and look. He pressed the button on the hilt and it glowed red, blue, green, purple and orange with yellow lightning crackling around it. The blade itself was pure white but the hilt was black with gray wrappings. This is my own creation, the Niji no Ken, the weapon I made to help control my Rainbow Dragon Slayer power. Everyone gasped in awe. This thing was amazing to see, the soft glow of the blade mixed with crackling lightning was quite a sight to see. Urza smirked and equipped again using her purgatory armor and weapon. Now this is a battle, and I am all fired up. Urza said with a glint in her eyes. Natsu steamed from his eye nostrils, hey that's my line, he screamed at her. The two charged at each other with both incredible speed and ferocity. Each making their attack as they passed each other by and stood there as the guild held its breath. Soon enough blood sputtered from Urza's side as she fell to her knees. She has gotten careless, but she was still smiling, she still had a long ways to go. Kale looked back at her putting away his sword and went to her and began healing her. Please train me, I wish to learn you techniques, she said looking at him. He nodded, but know this, I will not go easy on you. Or Natsu or anyone who wishes to train under me, it might break you, but I will make you stronger and able to fight anyone. She nodded and went to sleep as he picked her up to give to Elfman. Take her to the infirmary, she just needs sleep. He nodded, leaving as Kale made his way back to Gildarts. He nodded to him and got ready. Gildarts did the same. Without warning, they made their moves, Kale first as he charged ahead. Cocking his fist back to throw a punch when Gildarts caught it, not only causing a shockwave, but caving the ground underneath them. Kale backed away and went for another attack, as Gildarts used his crush magic, but Kale can perceive the moves for split seconds beforehand. Which gives him a slight edge, but not enough though, as he has never fought one of Clive's caliber. But he does manage to get one good slug after evading a crushed boulder, sending then older man hurtling into a couple trees, much to the guild's shock. Makarov finally stops the fight. Okay, battle has ended. Kale nods and takes a deep breath. He hasn't been pushed like since fighting Yagura and the Akatsuki. The girls came up to him while Kana went to Gildarts. Papa, are you okay? Anna asked, concerned. He nodded, yeah, just a bit out of shape, that is all. No worries my little Dragonite, he said as they all hugged him. The guild was still in shock minus Lucy and Juvia, who didn't know much about Gildarts' power. Once everyone got inside, things calmed down while Urza soon woke up and she talked with Master and Gildarts. So what do you two think? He asked. I like him, he has spunk, I think he is perfect for Fairy Tail. Gildarts exclaimed. I agree, he has such amazing talent and prowess, plus he embodies Fairy Tail like no one else I have seen, she compiled. He nodded without voicing anything. Back in the bar we see Kale making food for the guild, with Lucy talking to Juvia. How did you meet him? She asked, taking bites of her food. He took the job to get it to stop raining in the town we were in, but instead of fighting me, he spoke to me. He spoke to me, like I mattered, he was a real gentleman, offered me tea and made me feel good, he was patient and understanding. For the first tone ever I had been seen like a person, not a freak or inconvenience. When we went to get the reward he kept the bare minimum, gave me 10% and rest went to the orphanage. I have never met anyone like him and I'm glad he is my friend. Juvia said happily, remembering that moment. Don't forget, when we went to go food, a dark guild was looking for Juvia-chan and Papa beat them all up. It was so cool, Wendy replied after. Lucy went wide-eyed, she couldn't believe how amazing he was, but small smile spread on her face. Papa will do whatever he has to protect those he considered precious. Edolana stated. Juvia nodded, that was just who he was. Mira watched him making these delicious and wonderful dishes, and it just floored her. He was strong enough to wipe out dark guilds, yet he could be soft as well, caring for 3 little girls not of his blood but because he wanted to. It had become apparent that he had a fan base, Juvia, Mira, Kana, Laki, Biska and Lucy among the members. Soon the door opened up and the trio came out with Urza seeing cheesecake and rushing for it. The master appeared the bar, Kale my boy. By unanimous vote, you're now S-ranked, he said with a smile. He nodded, thank you master. Brats, we have a new S rank, let's celebrate. The guild was alive, laughing, talking, cheering, this was Fairy Tail was all about. But that soon stopped when the doors were blown open and in came 7 men in all black, with the tattoo on their necks. We have heard one Kale Arisher makes his home here, the leaders said. Everyone was on edge now, as Kale made his way out of the bar wearing his pink apron. I thought I made it perfectly clear last time, he said. This comes from Master Zerif himself, one said, now speaking up. The guild was now anxious, they didn't really want to hear that name. He knows what you have done and will soon make an appearance to meet you soon, but for now, to make an example of you, he said, snapping his fingers. The others began charging up magic attacks. Biska grabbed the children and hid behind the bar without a second thought, with Laki joining her with Miku and Wakaba protecting the bar. Kale then releases his killing intent at them, showing the form a black dragon with a red hue, straight at them. The evil mages stop and begin shaking, this pressure is much potent and terrifying, while the guild looks on. Urza, Natsu, Gray, Jet, Alzak, Juvia and Kana stand behind him, not feeling it but see it only. You come to Fairy Tail, try to attack my children and now you have sealed your fate, incapacitate only, I wish to speak to them, Makarov stated, none too kindly. The others went straight for their target, knocking them out and tying them up. As he released his ki, all was calm till they heard a roar in the background and didn't like the sound. They raced outside to see a demon-like monster coming to Magnolia. "What the hell is that?" Natsu shouted. "Just as I feared, one of Zerif's monster from the Book of Zerif." "This has become a dire situation indeed," Makarov said. The others looked on. No, they didn't have the power fight one of Zerif's demons just yet. "Stand back, please." They looked to Kale. "What are going to do?" Lucy asked. "Fight monster with monster, just keep the civilians back and get them to safety if need be, I will be back." Saying nothing else, he raised into the air, shocking them yet again. His eyes morphed into the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, hearts with cracks in them appeared in his eyes as he spoke. Susanoo. Pure white chakra surrounded him, creating a humanoid figure in battle armor with two swords at his side, the only mask now on the face. He made it walk to the creature. The guild gasped, they couldn't believe what they were seeing. "What is that?" Lucy asked. "That is called Susanoo. It is a construct of pure chakra, only those with the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan can wield it. The famed Uchiha are known for this power, but how my papa has it I don't know, but this is what turned the tide," Edolana said, coning out along with the others. Saying nothing, they watched on, seeing the construct march to the beast. Many of the members hoping he comes out okay. The civilians watched on as the Susanoo marched to take on the beast. The evil guild members unleashed, wondering what will happen next. Finally making it out of the city, he wasted no time, cocking his fist back and attacking the beast, sending quite a ways away. The creature didn't stay down for long. Getting back up, it charged in an attempt to destroy it, but now they were locked in a stalemate with neither giving ground. Kale was not worried, he would kill this thing no matter the cost. At the same time, Fairy Tail had picked up and detained the last few stragglers, going back to watch. At the same time, news reporters had come onto the scene and were shooting the coverage. The other guilds were now watching this death match. Kale was now growing tired of this, so he began powering up his Dragon Slayer power, making the Susanoo glowing the construct of the rainbow now as he grabbed the demon's head and crushed it in one go, with the body burning away after. Powering down back to the white color and soon releasing it, he floated down to the ground and made his way back to the guild. Both the guild and the city was silent, watching as he made his way back into Magnolia. But soon the reporters swamped him, asking questions. He stopped and looked at them, releasing his killing intent for a brief moment. One at a time. This calmed them all down, and asked one at a time. "How did you do that?" "I have special eyes that allow me to do that." "Who are you?" "I am Kale Arisher and I am a member of Fairy Tail," he said, showing the emblem on his neck. Once the questions died down, he made his way through the streets, where many clapped for him and cheered his name. He gave an eye smile and slight bow and headed back, but he could hear many of the girls whisper about him and would blush seeing him, making chuckle. "Dad!" He looked and saw Wendy, Carla and Anna race to him, jumping on him to hug him, as he laughed. "You three okay?" he asked, seeing if they had any marks or wounds. "No, we're okay. Are you okay? That demon was scary," Carla said. "Yeah, but I wasn't going to hurt you, so no worries," he said as they got on his shoulders and back and headed out with all watching him. "Who are they?" a random reporter asked. He turned for one last question. "My daughters, wanna get on bad side, hurt them and you'll succeed," he said in a cold, serious tone. Once back at the guild, he was met by cheers. "Dude, that was insane," Gray stated. "I'm all fired up now," Natsu proclaimed. He charged at Kale but was stopped by Urza. He looked over and saw Gildarts taking with Kana. He saw his eyes go big as he pulled her in for a hug, now crying as she was. That made him smile. He knew it would work out. When Urza approached him. "You ready?" She nodded and they went the med wing, where she laid in a bed. He then channeled his power and his glowed the same color as when he saved Maze. After a few minutes it stopped and he pulled his hand away and she was asleep. Tucking her, he left her be. Coming out of the room, he noticed the guild celebrating. He figured Gildarts told them all. His eyes met Kana's, and she gave him a bright grateful smile, to which he nodded to her, another good day, to say the least. Oi, shut up Streaker, I can too beat Urza. What are you talking about? Ya flaming idiot. You cannot. He sighed as a fight broke out, but it was a nice change from the solitude of his former life. As he looked out a window he smiled, as he made his way down to sit and eat some food. This is what he wanted for so long, and now he had it. Little Maze stood up and began waking to her mother with her father behind her, some of the ladies cheering and cooing at the adorable sight. I have no regrets. Fairy tale had become quite a talked about subject in the coming weeks after the confrontation. Well, mainly Kale, who the kingdom had seen wield incredible power and defeat one of Zerif's demons with relative ease. Right now we find him in front of the Magic Council, to discuss it. With him are his daughters and Makarov. Because of the fact Fairy Tail hasn't destroyed much of anything lately, they had gotten worried and inquiring to know more about Kale Erisher, who seemingly popped up out of nowhere. Kale Erisher, you stand before the council to only be asked questions. This is not an interrogation nor an inquisition. He nodded to the bailiff, who let the council speak. Where do you originally come from? One asked him. Knowing lying wouldn't help, he decided to use it. Instead of speaking about it, I will show you all, he said, closing his eyes, only to open them to show the same blood-red eyes that looked haunting and evil. Tsukiyomi. Natsu, Gray, Lucy, Happy, Juvia and Urza had just returned from the cursed island off the coast of Harjan Port, though they didn't get the reward. Because of the fact this was an S-class mission, they still completed it and came back changed a bit. But they noticed something off in corner. It was the little girls, and they crying, hugging Kale, who petted them softly. While Master sat at the bar, a look of anger and sadness over him. This worried them all as Urza and the others came up to him. Master, we are back, what is wrong? She asked him as they all sat down. He looked at Urza. I was given a first-hand glimpse into Kale's past, and it was just as haunting as I thought it would be, he said, taking a drink. This shocked them a bit as Juvia and Lucy made their way to him. He looked up with this sadness in his eyes. Welcome back, he said. They didn't say anything at first, but Kale saw it and knew what they wanted to ask, but he wasn't ready to show them just yet. I will show you another time, I'm not fully ready to go back there yet. They nodded, respecting his wish, as he put the trio down for a nap. Letting it all go for now. At the same time Makarov was reprimanding Natsu, Gray, Juvia and Lucy, who took it fairly well, and that was that. Things got quiet again, peace and calm taken over as Kale looked around. Kana and Gildarts were sitting at the bar drinking and having a lovely time getting truly acquainted. He saw Alzak, Max and Ritus are talking about whatever. VJ is dancing around without care. With Mikau and Wakabe sitting and bullshitting as well. Loki, Levi, Lucy, Juvia, Mira Jane, Biska and Urza were sitting at a table, talking about girl stuff and gossiping about news in and out of Magnolia. Many of the others were just laughing and eating, like Natsu, Gray and Elfman having an eating contest. Next to him were the four girls, now awake and munching on food, with Romeo sitting with them. All was at peace, and he liked it. Soon the front doors opened up and in came 5 wearing black cloaks, while the leader was Jose Porla, leader of Phantom Lord. Well, well. Seems like this dump hasn't changed at all, he said smugly. What do you want, Jose? Makarov asks rather coarsely. We were just in the neighborhood and wanted to come by and see how you have been. The guild was now tense as the other members looked at the 5 in cloaks. One was tall with bandages over his eyes. The second was more slender like Natsu but held an air of smugness. The third was lean with a mustache and an emotionless face. The final was a female with blue hair like Juvia, only much darker, with resting bitch face. The last one was Gajeel Red Fox, the Iron Dragon Slayer. Also, we have been tasked with bringing Lucy Heartfilia home to her daddy, he explained in a rather condescending tone. Lucy went white and began shaking at the mention of her father. Well, obviously her and her father have clashing ideas, so buzz off, jerks. Natsu said. He had gotten ready for a fight, but felt a hand on his shoulder. He looked to see Kale look at him for a moment. He then looked at the intruders. Well, then we will go make an appearance to him. Your services are no longer needed. Thank you very much, he said to them. Who said we are just leaving? We're being paid lots of money for this. Jose never got finished as the six were transported away using a Hiroshin-styled seal Kale had placed at the entrance for such a thing. All was quite as Lucy came to realization she would have faced her past now, and she didn't want to. She wasn't ready for that. The girls went to comfort her, as she had told them the truth beforehand. Soon enough she calmed down and agreed to go confront her father, she along with Natsu, Juvia, Gray, Urza along with Kale as team leader in case of incident because Master knew Kale could handle the brats as he called them. He looked at his trio of angels who were just so adorable. Anna and Carla had on little sundresses to match their styles while Wendy had on a blue and white shirt with green capris and black sandals he hair down. Okay darlings, Mira will look after you while am I gone. I should be gone for only a couple days at most. Till then be good and listen to whatever she says, he tells them. They nod. We will, Wendy says. He nods and hugs them kissing their heads. Leaving with the others unaware of the horrible fate awaiting the guild. The talks with her father are canon, now we go to where they are heading back. Lucy, although heartbroken, knew her father was set in his ways and nothing would change it. So they headed back home. Man, I can't believe him, what a jerk. Natsu said, smashing his fists together. What's done is done, all we can do is be there for Lucy. Urza stated. Nodding, they made it back home only to find large metal poles in the guild hall with the guild looking on in horror. Kale's first thought was his children and he went looking for them and he found them by Master and Mira, unharmed. Sighing he hugged them all, bringing them out of their trance. Master? Urza asked. No, no one was harmed and we can patch up the guild hall. Leave it at that, he said with finality. Gritting their teeth, Natsu and Gray let it go for now. Makarov looked to Kale, who nodded and made 10 clones, shocking the rest of the guild as they had never seen anything like that. They knew no one who had that kind of magic before. Kale got the poles out of the hall and used his affinities to fix up the hall. Which shocked the guild again, except for his girls who looked on in awe. Soon the hall looked like it did again and all was good. When Levi along with Kana, Lucy and Urza came up to Kale. Hey, we girls are having a sleepover in the guild hall tonight, could the girls come with? She asked. The trio looked at him hoping he would say yes. But he felt something nagging in the back of his mind, but let it go for now as he figured it wouldn't involve the girls. I don't see why not, I think that is a great idea, he said with an eye smile. After getting ready and setting them off, they had gone out to dinner for girl night and were heading back to the guild hall, never seeing the evil green glowing eyes and a sick chuckle. Next morning, Kale headed to the guild hall only to find it empty, which was odd. Making his way out, he saw everyone heading to the middle of town where the big oak tree was. Curious, he headed that way too. Shock and horror was all that could be seen. Levi, Lockie, Juvia, Wendy, Anna and Carla were hanging from the tree by wire. They were beaten and bruised and bloody, breathing was shallow. Urza, who had left after dinner as she had some business at home take care of, looked on in sickening horror. Mira covered her mouth as tears poured down her face. She had decided to skip dinner and met them at the guild, but they didn't show up. She had figured they were caught up with Levi. Biska had to cover her eyes as her heart broke at the sight, holding her baby as Alzak gritted his teeth in anger. Who did this? Natsu said, holding back his rage. Gray began stuttering, his muscles flexing in pure anger. My children. Makarov said having broken his walking stick. A foul flooding of killing intent appeared as they looked back at Kale. His eyes widened, pure disbelief on his face. His heart skipped a beat, all time stopped moving. Hanging there was his children and friends. They had been hurt, they had been made an example of. Walking to them on autopilot, he saw their wrists were bruised and bloody from the wire. Cutting them all down, they laid on the ground as paramedics came and took them to hospital. The guild watched as Kale's demeanor changed. He stood up watching the ambulances take them away with a clone he made going with them. From behind the tree came one no one expected. Gajeel, Red Fox. At first the Fares were going to attack, but Kale looked at him and asked, "Who?" Gajeel sighed. He was all for hurting people, but he drew the line at kids. Even he had lines he didn't cross. Porla and his elementals. Hearing this shocked them all, but it meant war. That was all he needed to hear, and he vanished in a mix of fire and lightning, scaring a few of the many who saw. Makarov knew better than to intervene, but also wanted some of the action. "You have attacked my children and grandchildren, and for that I will not forgive you. This means war." At Phantom Lord's castle stood tall with the guild celebrating their victory. Lucy Hartfilia was in their custody and would be used to take her family fortune for themselves. Soon the celebration stopped as the front doors were blown off and came Kale Erisher, and boy is he pissed. Without warning began shooting off dragon roars, hitting the inside of the castle as the guild members began to either try to fight back or run. As debris fell on them, with Kale looking for the ones responsible. At the same time the guild had arrived to see what Kale was doing, and it shocked them to the core. This was not the father and friend they had come to know. This was the monster they knew he could be. After 3 attacks he stopped and went deeper inside as Makarov followed him, leaving Urza to take care of the leftovers, which were still a lot. Much to Natsu, Gray and Elfman's glee. Both men went into Porla's office to see him and his elementals waiting for him. "We have been expecting you. Why, was not attacking the hall enough? You attack my children as well?" Makarov stated angrily. Porla smirked simply. "You made fools of Phantom Lord. I would have let go the fact you damaged the guild, but you hurt my precious people, including my 3 daughters. That is something I don't forgive. May the council be merciful, for I won't." He began powering up at the same time Arya did, as well as he took off his bandages and showed his light blue glowing eyes as he appeared before Kale with a gleaming smirk. And grabbed Kale. Well, tried to, only for Kale to block it, and the pair stood there not moving, but you could tell they were putting straight into it. "Your power will be mine, and soon you will fall before our might." Kale said nothing as Arya's smirk vanished and he was punched back to Porla. "You may have taken my Dragon Slayer power, but I have a secondary power the likes you have never seen before. Don't push it, or I will give you war." Soon the pair left the castle, as did the rest of Fairy Tail, with Natsu holding Lucy. Kale looked back and gave one last roar, clipping a good portion of it off. Cheering they headed home. The girls woke up in the hospital slowly, not remembering what had happened. "Welcome back to the land of the living ladies." They looked over to see Kale by their bedside with some water and a smile. Lisi, Loki and Juvia smiled at him as they took the water, as a few of the guild members came in as well. The real Kale was with his children as they hugged on him and cried, vaguely remembering their horrific encounters. While furious, their well-being was all that mattered. He looked over to the window, seeing out into the world. At the same time, Porla looked at his guild hall and was furious as well. This means war. This ain't over, not by a long shot. Fairy Tail and Phantom Lord now were on the eve of war, and only one side was coming out alive. With Phantom's guild needing repair, Fairy Tail took the time to lick their wounds and regain their strength, so for now they were on high alert. But for right now they were taking missions. Gildarts had just left on another 100-year, Laxus and his legion hasn't been seen since Maze's near death. But for the most part life was quiet, except for the fact Sorcerers Weekly was coming to interview the guild, and Mira, Lucy, Biska along with Maze, Juvia and Urza were going to do modeling shoots the day after, and Makarov asked Kale to accompany them. In the meantime he was watching as the reporters spoke to the members of the guild, while he watched the kids play in the safe zone he made after the chair incident. Carla and Anna were looking at old shinobi magazines Kale had with him, seeing the weapons and jutsu the people of his world could utilize. Wendy and Romeo were talking about magic, as Romeo wanted to better his fire magic skill set and Wendy was telling him about her father's training methods. He was holding Maze as Biska and Alzak were to be coming home from their mission today. she was simply looking around seeing all that was happening and would coo and giggle at all she saw. She had Bisca's hair color and eyes, but all else was her father. She was just one of the cutest creatures Kale ever saw besides his girls, one of the reasons he even became a father, to protect the innocence his own family didn't and to give hope when needed. To those like Anna or Wendy, he didn't want to be another statistic and he came out on top. 3 wonderful kids with good heads on their shoulders, what more could any father ask for? Broken from his thoughts when he felt a hand on his face and saw little Maze looking up at him with a look of concern and curiosity. Ever since he saved her she wanted to understand him better. He was different from her mommy and daddy. "Hello darling, how is my favorite niece today? You have been such a good girl today. I think I will give you a treat. How does a bit of ice cream sound?" he asked her. She smiled and nodded. Ice cream sounded good. Kale looked at the girls who were beaming for a frozen treat as well. He chuckled and picked up the 8-month-old who laid her head on his shoulder and headed to the kitchen for ice cream. Mira, Urza, who were smiling at him as well as a couple reporters, watched him go into the kitchen. "Wait, isn't that the one who beat the demon monster last month?" a reporter asked. "Yes, this is Kale Arisher. I'm sure you know of his exploits, but he is one shining example of what fairy tale stands for. He is the bane of the dark guilds, and should you ever hurt his children or those he care about, may the gods have mercy, for he won't," Makarov stated to the reporter. They just looked on at him and were intrigued by him. He had power never before seen, and it was also incredible to see a man who had the powers of demons and gods seem so human to them. Watching as he placed his pink apron on with the number 1 dad logo, he got to making ice cream while Maze sat in her high chair. Everyone liked watching him work. He was an artist at work and it was incredible. Urza felt something more for him. She had been feeling it for a while, since he healed her eye. She couldn't explain it, but her heart would beat faster when he spoke to her or when he made her favorite dessert. This was all new to her, but she liked it in him. Working on the ice cream, he would dance around the kitchen showing off, making Maze giggle and clap for him. Even his daughters came and watched him enjoying it. One reporter took pictures while another wrote a story about him. Makarov chuckled drinking his beer as he loomed at his children. Urza and Mira held the biggest gazes, blush on their cheeks and longing in their eyes. "Done, who wants some?" he shouted out, placing bowl after bowl on the bar, all different flavors. Many shouted happily and came for a bowl of ice cream. This is what fairy tale is about. Next day came and the girls along with Kale, they went into the studio and set up for the photos. Mira, Urza, Lucy and Juvia got into bikinis and got several shots off in many different poses, while Bisca and Maze got into beautiful clothing for the more family-friendly posing. Maze would smile or giggle when the shots were taken, making the photographer very happy. "Kale, I want to get a couple shots with you and Maze, then by yourself," the guy said. He nodded, putting on a plain black sleeveless shirt with face mask and pants. As he came into the shot, he took Maze, who was now over 8 months, and held her in front of him with Bisca wrapping her arms around his neck gently for a family-style photo. She then left and it was just the two, but Maze had fallen asleep, so he laid down on his back with her on his chest, sleeping peacefully, making it a side shot. Bisca came and got her as Kale took off the shirt and was in a couple poses like he was asked. The shoot was a success, and once paid they left. A week later the magazine came out and was one of their biggest sellers, yet especially from a female standpoint. Kale's photos were more successful than even Myra's and Urza's shocking fairy tale. Wendy and the girls would giggle at the photos of their dad with Maze. The reader's poll for favorite picture was his side shot with the baby. Many women just loved that picture of eye candy with a cute baby like her. Right now though we see him with Wendy, Carla, Happy, Anna and Romeo at the training grounds where he is training them in their strengths and then their weaknesses. At the same time Miko, Wakaba, Urza, Kana and Laki were watching him. Right now he was teaching Romeo in fire magic and the boy was getting it quite quickly and efficiently. Wendy was mastering her Sky Dragon Slayer magic, while the two exceeds he had given scrolls to and were reading up on them. "You know, we need to take his example and get back to our training as well. He is making us look like slackers," Wakaba stated with a chuckle. Miko nodded as they watched. Laki was taking notes. she was very impressed with some of his ideas and strategies, stuff many mages would have never thought about. Kana was looking over her cards and doing her own training while Urza was waiting for them to finish so they could spar. Urza took a moment. With both eyes she could actually see with both again. It felt real, it was like a dream come true. We have the video from Fairy Tail. The tape had been put in and several people in the room watched. As one of Zerif's demons had been demolished by this man in a powerful construct, the tape had been stopped and they sat in silence. It seems we underestimated our foe, for now we leave them be. Once the time is right we make our move. The guild was alive, it was Master Makarov's birthday so they celebrated it in typical fashion, with Mira providing the drinks and Kale the food. It had only been a couple weeks since Lucy's abduction and Kale was just waiting for Phantom to make their move. Right now we see Urza talking Kale as he sits near the protected kids section. He was the guard when they were in the guild hall. I just wanted to say thank you for everything you have done, including giving me my eye back. It means a lot to me, she said, finishing off her dessert. He chuckled. It was no problem, really. I just like helping people, besides seeing it now it looks better than the fake eye and brings out the color in your eyes, plus the red hair makes you really beautiful, he said to her. She blushed a bit, her heart pounding in her chest. She turned away for a minute. Kale looked back to see Anna and Carla asleep, Wendy and Romeo still talking, looking at the Shinobi mag from earlier. He placed a silencing seal on the area so they wouldn't be disturbed. I wish to make a toast right now. Being your guild master has been one of the best choices and in my life and wouldn't choose any other way. But I also want to thank Kale for his help and his care and love for Fairy Tail, and I ask each and every one of you to keep the spirit of Fairy Tail alive, for we are not only a guild, but a family, Makarov said, throwing his hand up with his pointer finger and thumb out in an L shape with the back of his hand showing. It is the sign of Fairy Tail. Everyone else is doing it as well with a moment of silence to go with it, even Kale is doing it, making Urza smile. It was a happy time for them. We almost there. Yes, and soon we'll be able to see her again. Yeah, I can't wait to see Urzy soon. All preparations are ready, set course for Fairy Tail. By your word, Master Porla, the Four Elements said. On the side, Gajeel just ate some scrap steel and sighed to himself. He couldn't wait for this to be over with. Phantom Lord's Hall fixed and ready to go, now could lay waste to Fairy Tail. Magnolia was enjoying itself, with Kale a part of Fairy Tail. Makarov was able to keep those knucklehead in line so they weren't destroying stuff as often. Right now we see the guild rather calm and at peace. Kale is washing dishes, having made a big pot of ramen after it had been raining, and Mira was helping him clean up. Makarov was in the forest behind the guild going to see his friend Porluska. Gildarts was to come back early from his mission, soon completing another 100 year. Romeo was looking over a manuscript of fire magic techniques Kale found and had given to the boy. All of a sudden Kale and Natsu began hearing noises coming from behind the guild in the water. Without scaring anyone he went to check it out, making a sealless clone. About 3 minutes later the clone had puffed away and Kale receives the information, making his go wide. Everyone look alive. We have company and it's not friendly, he said. Outside the guild all the members stood there looking out at the water minus the Thunder Legion, Gildarts and Makarov. Shock, disbelief, dread and the joy of an upcoming battle. These were some of the feelings felt as they watched a guild hall come on mechanical legs through the water. Once within range, the guild hall stopped moving and a voice came, a giant speaker. Fairy Tail, you have exactly to the count of 10 to give us Lucy Heartfilia, or we release the devastating power of our elemental cannon on Mongolia, the voice of Jose Porlia said. Many of the others began freaking out by this point, but soon Kale to command. Listen up fairies, we stand now or Magnolia falls, of one blood, of heart, Biska, Alzak, those with long rang get to the back, Levi, Droy, those mid rang and close rang come up to the front with me, he said, making a clone to go back inside and be with the kids, bringing them into the basement to sleep fight. He will not have Wendy, Romeo, Maze or the Exceeds witness this. The guild got into battle stance and roared out in defiance. Suddenly the guild began to change and a big cannon came out and charged up. 10. Hearing this, Urza was about to re-equip a big shield, but Kale stopped her. As he made the Susanoo, instead the white construct's chest appeared as the cannon went off, blasting a large magical projectile right at Kale, causing not only a big explosion but lots of dust and a minor aftershock to hit Magnolia. Porla and his elementals had watched from above only to see the white construct still there, which shocked them greatly. At the same time, Natsu, Gray, Elfman had gone inside, while the construct had cracked and Kale panted a bit, going to one knee. He had not expected that much power behind it, but nothing he couldn't handle. After taking a breath, he got back up, dusting himself off. "Are you okay?" He looked to see Urza look at him with concern as Mira had run ahead to check on Elfman. "Yeah, just didn't expect that much power is all," he said to her. She nodded to him, glad he was okay, when his face went from calm to horrified as he looked down to see a hand going through it. Urza also looked down with the same look. All of a sudden phantoms appeared and the guild began attacking them back to stop their advance. Kale grabbed the phantom, much to Porla's shock, and destroyed it, so that is what Kale did, but he looked back at Urza. "Go help the knuckleheads," his voice calm, hiding the pain he was in. She nodded and went to help the others. Kale almost lost his balance, but got back up. His stubborn will wouldn't let his friends and his children be hurt. His eyes changed into the Rinnegan and the tailed beast chakra began clocking him. Natsu had finished fighting the fire elemental, and was now fighting Gajeel. Gray had finished his fight with the water elemental, but had a bit help from Juvia, the two now holding hands looking at the frozen captive. Smiles on the faces. Elfman and Mira, who had helped her brother gain control of his power, but also gained her power back as well, had finished of the earth elemental and were now along with the others going to take apart the cannon's energy supply. Urza was now fighting the leader, Arya the air elemental, who was putting up quite a bit of a fight but had had an angry redhead to face. Her crush had been hurt by them and she was not happy. "You may have beaten me, but Master Porla will win," he said. "Phantoms can't beat fairies." "Re-equip," she said, getting into a set of battle armor. She smirked and charged ahead. Inside the office of Porla, Natsu stood. He had beaten Gajeel, but taking on a wizard saint was different. "You're quite impressive, Salamander, but now I must say goodbye, fool," Porla said, charging up his greatest attack. "I don't think so." Both looked over to see an enraged Makarov coming inside. "So you came back. You have hurt my children again, this time no mercy," he said. Makarov held his hands over each other and began powering up. "Only those who are guilty should fear. When chaos reigns, order must be restored." A ball of gold light appeared in his hands, and Porla became very afraid. Fairy law. Soon everything whited out. Urza, Mira, Elfman, Natsu, Gray and Juvia, along with Master, coming out of the now broken guild, all smiles and happy. Once they came back into view, they heard a voice cry out. "Someone help!" It was Kana and it sounded distressed. They rushed to see what was happening. They found the others looking at a now pale Kale, who not breathing well. The others were shocked, but Urza, Mira, Juvia were looking at him in horror. The trio ran to him. "Kale!" they yelled to him. He looked up, his pale face under his mask. He gave a pained eye smile, but he couldn't really speak. "What happened to him?" Juvia said, now in tears, seeing her older brother dying. "Porla's phantoms, if touched by a living person, they destroy it, flesh, organs, everything. It seems like he is dying," Makarov said sadly. Now the guild was in shock. They were losing a friend. Juvia ran to him and hugged him, now crying, her first true friend. Lucy also, as she felt immense guilt looking down at her friend, she began whimpering how sorry she was to him. Urza and Mira, though, were losing a man they had come to love, and that hurt worse than anything they felt before, minus Mira losing Lisa Anna. He started coughing up a bit of blood, which made his mask look darker, so he pulled it down as the blood seeped from his mouth. "Please don't go, don't leave us," Juvia begged. When she went to look at him, his eyes closed and he stopped breathing, making Juvia cry out in pain, as Mira did as well, remembering her little sister as Elfman comforted her. Urza felt hollow as her eyes widened as tears fell from her eyes as she fell to her knees. Next thing we see is Juvia and Urza blacking out. Both girls woke up in the infirmary, both were confused for a few moments, then it all came flooding back, and they felt their spirits dim a bit. When the door came open, and both looked up to see Kale looking better with tanned skin and no face mask. Both gasped as he looked to them with some food in when he saw them awake. He smiled, "Hello girls, I'm sorry I made you worry." Without warning, both girls got up and ran to him, happy tears trailing and smiles. He put the food down away from him and was caught by both girls now crying on him. Hugging them both, they could feel his heart and knew he was alive. He kissed both their heads and all was good again. Both had eaten and were given the okay to leave. Juvia did so happy he was alive again. Kale had gone to pick up the dishes but was stopped when he felt a hand touched his own. Urza needed to say it to him, with what had happened earlier she needed to, she knew now she loved him. "Kale, please wait. I have something to say to you." She stopped to take a breath. He looked at her, his attention fully on her now. "In the months since you have been here, I have found myself grown quite fond of you, and I enjoy both yours and the girls' company so much. Plus you gave me my full sight back. I can't ever repay you, but I have come to realize I love you. I have for a while now," she said, closing her eyes. She finally said it. All of a sudden her hand was empty and felt a bit sad, thinking he was gonna reject her. But she felt him grab her shoulder and place his lips upon her tenderly, but with a bit of passion behind it as well. Her eyes shot open, with a bit of surprise, but soon melted into his embrace. He felt the same. Slowly she wrapped her arms around his neck, slightly getting on tiptoes. She smiled into him as he grabbed her waist, pulling her close to him. After a few minutes they broke away, with a small amount of saliva between them on their tongues. "I have find myself deeply attracted to you myself, your fiery red hair and beautiful chocolate eyes, you captivated at me and look forward to getting to know much more in the coming time, my dear," he said. That made her smile with a bit of blush, as she laid her head in his chest. When soon enough another pair of arms wrapped around him and giggled. Kale knew it was Mira as he moved a bit and wrapped both arms around both girls. "I hope you're okay with this, but Mira beat you to it first, but told me to speak to you as well," he said to Urza. While surprised, she knew and was okay with it. "Yes, I am okay with this," she smiled as both ladies put their heads on his chest in happy bliss. Soon enough he hears more giggling and looked over to see Wendy, Carla and Anna watching him. He smiled at them, winking as they left quietly. Things quiet down after the attack and Kale decided to take some vacation time with his girls. He did leave 3 clones to continue, to make food and such for the guild. Makarov gave the okay for them and off they went to the beach for 3 full days of fun. Wendy and the cat girls were playing in the sand, making a sand castle with a clone of Kale, while Kale was rubbing suntan lotion on his new girlfriends, who were loving his strong hands all over their bodies. Mira sighed contently, while Urza moaned slightly. Both loved it. He was now massaging it into their skin, which was relaxing their muscle greatly and felt much more loose and relaxed than before. He even went an extra mile and painted their fingers and toes. Urza had a red to match her hair, while Myra's was a whitish blue, which earned quite a bit of brownie points for later. While that was happening, Urza spoke. "Now this is the life. We nabbed a wonderful man, didn't we, Mira?" she asked while slightly moaning. Her friend nodded. "Yeah, we did. Oh, right there, babe. Ah," she said happily. They lazed and played all day till dinner time, and once they headed back to their hotel rooms, got dressed and headed down for dinner. The girls all had one beautiful dresses. Urza had a red dress, Mira had a black dress, Wendy had on a blue dress, Carla and Anna had on white dress that matched their auras, while Kale had on a simple blue dress shirt, green pants and blue boots. Once they made into the dining area, where he had a special table reserved for his girls. He seated the girls first, then himself, and ordered. "So how have you girls been today?" he asked. "We had a lot of fun. We made a sand castle and we buried Wendy," Anna said as the girls laughed. Mira and Urza smiled as they listened. It was nice from the chaos. They seem fine, though most isn't their faults. Once dinner was done, the little family made their way back to the rooms to get ready for sleep. Wurzy. Urza froze, like she saw a ghost. Slowly she turned and saw 4 people she thought she would never see again. Miliana. Urza looked on at 4 of her dear friends from once upon a time, in total shock. Wah, how? The cat girl giggled at her, running up to hug her. Silly, we just asked for you. We have missed you, Wurzy, she said happily. Urza hugged her back, smiling. She had indeed missed them all. Wally, Simon, what happened to you all? She asked them. They smiled sadly at her. We need help. Jalal has nearly completed construction on the Tower of Heaven. He is no longer himself, he is darker now, more evil. Miliana said to her, the fear in her voice evident. Urza gasped. She had not thought about it in years. Whatever help you need, we can give to you. Kale said, walking up to them. The trio looked at him while Urza smiled at her lover. This is what she liked about him. Who are you? Naya. Kale Erisher, with me are Mira Jane Strauss, and my 3 daughters Wendy, Carla and Edolana Erisher, he said, introducing themselves. They all bowed to them, but Miliana gasped. Kitties, she squeaked as she jumped up and down once and then reached out for the girl and began rubbing her face and the 2 exceeds faces, making them gasp in surprise while she purred. Kale and the others' sweat drop at her antics. Any help is appreciated, but we need to stop Jalal now. He plans on using it on the Magic Council, Wally said to them. Kale nodded, turning to Mira. Darling, can you take the girls back home, please? He asked. She nodded, going up to hug him and steal a kiss. Okay, you and Urza come home, you hear, she said seriously with a nervous voice. He nodded, we promise. She hugged Urza as well. Come home safely. The redhead smiled, hugging her dear friend, and she and the girls headed back home with promise to Miliana she could see them again soon. The 2 got on the ship with them and they made their way to their destination. Before them was an island with a spiral tower that looked a bit off-centered, but also looked dangerous. But this needed to be done, and Urza needed to close this dark chapter in her life. She felt 2 pairs of arms reach out for her, pulling her into a strong embrace. She smiled when she felt her lover kiss her shoulder. No matter what happens, I will be there right beside you, all the way. 'Cause I'm never gonna let you go, he whispered into her ear softly. She closed her eyes with a smile, leaning back. Oh, how lucky she was to have someone as wonderful and understanding as him. She took his arms under her and locked their fingers together. He had a warmth that even Master didn't have, and it felt both strange and invigorating. The boat finally made it to the island and got off, making their way to meet him and hoped that it wouldn't become worse than they all thought. Heading up to the top of the structure, they were met by a large open structure with strange-looking crystallization all around. So you all come back. They turned to see near a mirror with a man with blue hair with a strange tattoo on his face looking at them. Only his eyes were the normal white, they were black with the white iris. Jalal, Urza said in shock. By this point it had been years, and now she hardly remembered the first friend she made. Ah, Scarlet, been a long time, he said. His voice sounded wrong, like it wasn't his own. Kale had been quietly watching and kept feeling something was off with Jalal. It was Zirif's own power per se, but it was of Zirif. Why have you done this? Urza asked him, wanting to know why. Simple really, to destroy the Magic Council and usher in a new world order, he said with a chuckle. This put them all on notice and became tense. So this is your plan, Zirif? Kale said aloud. They all turned to Kale. What do you mean? Simon asked. Jalal is dead. This husk is a vessel, owned now by one of Zirif's demons. Isn't that right? Kale said, looking at Jalal. The demon laughed, having been figured out. Making the others either look on in horror or now understand the gravity of coming things. What is your real name, demon? Kale said, now standing in front of Urza and Miliana defensively while Wally and Simon became defensive as well. My name is Devour and I will usher in Master Zirif's new world. His empire will rule forevermore, he shouted to the heavens. The second he looked back, Kale was right in front of him, his fist pulled back and punched the demon hard, sending him flying. He looked back, "You four stop the tower from destroying the council, I will buy you all the time you need," he yelled to them. The four nodded as Miliana grabbed Urza's hand and they raced out of the room to an adjacent stairwell to the main control room. Leaving Kale alone as a group of soldiers loyal to Zeref appeared. "Kill him, I must go stop them," the demon said, spitting up a glob of blood. Kale made 4 clones who went and took on the cannon fodder. "So there is more to you," Master Zeref told me. "The Dragon Council had an ace up their sleeve," he said with a smirk. "Even if they didn't, the outcome would still be the same. I won't let this world come to ruin because your master is an emo bastard. He should have known all magic comes with a price," he said, cracking his neck as 2 explosions broke around them. The demon frowned. This hybrid knew too much. He needed to be dealt with. Having taken out more guards, the 4 made their way to the control room. They wasted no time and continued onwards. As they passed by different rooms, they were met by more guards, but Simon and Wally took them out with Miliana and Urza leading them on. Finally they made it, but it was guarded by more demons from the book. Urza requipped her outfit and got ready to fight. "We must not fail. Fiore is counting on us." The 3 nodded and they got to work. They soon found these little imps to be cannon fodder. They finished them off fairly quick till the room was empty. Making their way to the controls, Urza gasped in shock. Never did she think he would complete it. At the same time the 3 began turning of the machine, they heard it power down and it went offline, making smile and cheer. "Now let us stop Zeref and put Jalal to rest," she said to them. They nodded when the machine turned back on and began counting down. The 4 freaked and tried turning it off again. At the capital of Fiore, the clouds and sun disappeared, swallowed up by black clouds with thunder and lightning appearing. "Something is wrong, something is amiss," council member Yajima states, looking outside. Many began fleeing the streets back into their homes for safety and wait out the storm. Mira and the girls see it from the train they are on and are worried for their father and Urza. "Do you think they will be okay?" Wendy asked Mira. Mira smiles at them as they huddled up against her. "Yes, I do. Because your father wouldn't let anything happen to us or Urza, so have faith and let's get home and welcome them as well," she said. They nodded to her and rode off back to Magnolia. Kale and Jalal were locked in battle. It was like watching gods fight to the death. Pops in the sound barrier kept sounding. It was seen early on Kale was the better. His strength in physical and magical terms was far superior even to a demon from Zeref's book, but held another power unknown to it. The island was shaking itself apart now from all the intense power. Frustrated Urza began destroying the console, as did the other 3, till the power finally shut off, landing at the 1-second mark. They had done it, now to stop the demon from trying again. Jalal was panting, bloodied with ripped clothing. Kale panting finally, though not as bad as his opponent. He wasn't as messed up either. He watched him make his attack. Heavenly bodies. Above them the ceiling darkened and a golden light beam appeared, shooting in one direction that zigzagged with 7 circles on the line as blast of magical energy appeared and barreled at Kale. Dodging them, he made his way back to Jalal for round 2. Rainbow Dragon's Roar. The energy beam fired at Jalal, who was using his heavenly magic against him. But Kale, who kept his skill sharp, was the stronger fighter here and made it to him for a quick deck to the face. Kale couldn't play around anymore and began powering up, the rainbow glow emitting from him. The demon also power up his heavenly body magic as well. This would decide the victor. At the same time Urza and the others destroyed the console, but now the tower was falling down around them. The 4 hauled ass down the stairs, not wasting any time. Once they made it to the main floor, they raced back into the room, seeing the 2 powers about to go at it again. The demon saw them and smirked and flashed his light magic at them. Urza and Miliana were in the way as Urza shielded the cat girl. At the same time Simon did the same. As the blast hit them all, the island rocked violently for a few moments, then stopped and all was quiet. Urza and Miliana opened their eyes in horror as Simon stood there smoking, his body charred and burned, but still he was alive. "No," Miliana said in tears, breaking from Urza to Simon. The big man fell back, landing with a thud. "Simon," they yelled out to him. He looked to see his friends alive and okay, she smiled through the pain. Please don't leave, Miliana begged him. She has loved him for many years, and he finally loved her back. She couldn't lose him. He said nothing as the demon began laughing. Foolish mortal. Kale, though, was no angry. It is not weak to value life, but then again a peon such as yourself could never understand that, he said, his eyes now glowing as the Rinnegan, the Sharingan and the Byakugan merged into one, creating a new Dojutsu. The light was bright and blinding, then died down, and they all looked and were shocked by what they saw. His eyes were pure white with 5 purple rings and blood-red tomo for iris. Congratulations, you have helped me unlock a new Dojutsu altogether. The Eternigan, now witness their power. He raised a hand to the demon, Bansho Tennin. The power hit the demon and he came flying to Kale as his hand was covered in pure white chakra. Slamming it into the chest of Jalal, the demon coughed up blood. His eyes showed true fear. What are you? It said as Kale ripped out Jalal's heart and power. I am complicated, he said as the body turned to ash. He turned back and walked to the others, who looked at him in shock. Kneeling down, he placed the heart onto Simon's chest and it vanished into him along with his power. The body then glowed a soft green light and began healing up, which shocked the trio. His body soon looked good as new and he groaned as his eyes fluttered open. Miliana began crying seeing him awake and alive again. Urza couldn't believe it at all. What did you do? She asked her lover. I regained Jalal's pure good heart and his heavenly magic from the demon, using it to save Simon at the same time, he said to her. After a few moments, Simon's hair turned blue and he gained Jalal's face tattoo as well. Didn't expect that at all, Kale said. Simon stood up and felt the new power and hugged Miliana. Thank you, my friend. Kale nodded to him, deactivating his eyes. Now, then let us go before this becomes out tomb as well. The 5 soon left as the tower crumbled. Once outside, they made it to the edge of the island as the tower fell. Urza and the others gave silent prayers to lose they loved and lost to the tower. Kale felt something nearby in the water. As he walked over to it, he felt it calling to him. So he decided to try something. He reactivated his eyes and made over 100 hand signs quickly and slammed them down into the water. Secret Arts Etron Rebirth, Active Life. The water began glowing and making a form. The other, having said their prayers, looked over to see what Kale was doing and were curious. The water soon gave form and became solid in mass and female in shape. Once completed, an older woman with black hair stood on the shore completely naked. As Kale opened up his scroll and brought out an old brown cloak, placing it on her. She opened her eyes and looked around, seeing people she has never met before. She became weary. Greeting, ma'am, Kale said, bowing to her in polite manner. Who are you and where I am? She asked. He gave her a nice smile and spoke. Kale and Urza were back at Fairy Tale with UR, who was being hugged by a grief-stricken Gray and Lion, who she just smiled and coddled for a little while. Fairy Tale looked on, cheering as Kale stood off to the side, smiling at the happy reunion. You did a good thing today. Kale was broken out of his thoughts when he was hugged by Urza and Mira. All I did was fix something that was broken. Besides, there is nothing better than getting a second chance and some much-needed closure, he said. The girls smiled and leaned against him as UR broke from her boys and came over to Kale, now fully dressed. Thank you for reviving me. I don't know why you're here and what your plan is, but I am glad you're here, she said with a smile. He gave a nice smile back. You're welcome, Mrs. UR. Also, I am curious, do you have a child? He asked. She took on a sad look. Yes, my daughter. I would give anything to see her and apologize for leaving her behind, she said sadly. Gray and Lion knew, while many others were curious. Don't worry, I will find her for you and bring her back home. You have my word as a dragon slayer, he said to her. That made her smile. Well, help you. Gray and Lion walked up to her as well. I'm so lucky to have such wonderful boys. Thank you too, Kale Erisher, the golden-hearted killer. She left to go back home with several parties, also much happier as well. I think we should celebrate brats, Makarov said. And that is what they. Kale made the food and Mira served the drinks, and all had a wonderful day. That was till Natsu and Gray got into another fight while Lucy and Juvia sighed at them. Urza on the other hand put some fear into them and they calmed down greatly. As Kale brought out some desserts and other sweets, he saw little Mace slowly standing up looking at Uncle Kale with big happy eyes and a bigger smile as she walked to him giggling. The guild all watched with happiness and several ladies cheered her on. Kale knelt down and picked her up and hugged her as she kissed his cheek, earning os from the ladies. Wendy, Carla and Anna were sitting by and giggling as well. They weren't jealous at all. All of a sudden a swirling black hole appeared in the floor under Kale and he is being sucked in, much to everyone's horror. Alzak, he shouted out as he tossed him his little girl, catching her as a table broke his fall and Kale was gone. All Kale could see was miles of land and sky. He must have been several thousand feet up in the air. Whoever did this was gonna pay dearly. Falling and falling as he used his wind chakra to make sort of a buffer. Till finally he landed, hard inside a building. Several screams were heard as a table broke his fall. Ugh, that sucked. Hey, are you okay, mister? He sat up cracking his neck. He looked around to a big shock. Lucy, he asked. The girl in front of him looked like Lucy she had on a leather biker outfit of sorts. He looked round and saw many familiar faces, but were differently dressed. Where I am? He asked. Why, you're in Fairy Tale, in the kingdom of Edolos, Levi stated, pushing up her glasses. God damn it. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you enjoyed this what if and want to see next part of it, comment down below and let me know. Also share this video with your friends. See you in the next video. Peace.